Our final piece of the puzzle today, Brian, and part 4 of our talk about the defensive line is we want to talk about who we think are going to be the breakouts of this defensive line. And then we also want to talk about some of the newcomers as well. And newcomers mainly being the freshmen. We're not talking about, RJ Oben. We've talked about him a lot, obviously. But we want to talk about the breakouts and who we feel really good about having a really good season, and then guys that maybe have a chance of being a breakout and having a really good season. So I'll let you kick it off with who you have the most confidence that will be a breakout on this defensive line.
It's really two guys, right? And it's the B&B boys. I mean, that's what it comes down to for me. It's
like
Boubacar Traore and Josh Burnham, right? That's what it comes down to for me, Boubacar and Burnham. And look, because here's the deal, Vince. It's Notre. Part of the reason that I had, like I said earlier, I feel this is going to be good. Like my emotional evaluation is that that all these questions that we have are going to be answered positively.
Agreed.
Why? Because we're not talking about, man, I hope this really good try-hard kid can give you a lot, right? You love Justin Adamiola, great effort and all that, but he was there's a reason him and his brother didn't get drafted, especially Justin. Jason had some other issues, but like there's a reason Justin gets drafted. He's undersized. He's not a super athlete. He was just a great try-hard guy. Myron Tungvalo-Mosa, Kurt Heinisch, great try-hard guys.
Sure.
The difference now is you're actually talking about actual big-time talent.
Mm-hmm.
Not Boubacar Traore 6'4" with 35+ inch arms, is from what I'm told. Right? Josh Burnham is a very, very twitchy athlete with very long arms at almost 6'4" and over 250 pounds. These are guys that aren't just, man, I hope that, former 3-star, great effort, great attitude, try-hard guy can help you out this year. The Jameer Jones. And you love those guys. You need those guys.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't bank your entire season on those guys being dudes. That's the difference. You need them to not be dudes, right? And the dudes you want to be guys that you look at and say, that guy's got tools to eventually be something. And when I look at Boubacar and Josh Burnham, of the non-freshmen,
right,
they're the two most physically gifted defensive linemen Notre Dame has. Not defensive ends, defensive linemen that Notre Dame has coming back, right? Like this, just God-given tools and potential.
Sure.
But the two of them combined for 2 sacks last year, right? So the production's got to take a big jump. So, I mean, this is an easy one. They're going to be breakouts to some degree. Vince, we always have layers to breakouts.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
There's guys who are rotation guys that become like regulars and good producers, and then there's the guys that become stars and all that. I don't know if either of them are going to have breakouts to where they're going to jump from what they were last year into the star category, but I fully expect both of them to go from 1 sack each to minimum 4 sacks each this season. Like, I think they're going to become better parts of this defensive line rotation.
Yeah.
How far they go, that remains to be seen, but I'm quite confident saying those two alone are going to give this edge group a boost in pass rushing ability. Just day one boost in pass rushing ability this season.
Well, look, if you've been listening to the entire show, I already said that I want to move Josh over to the other side so he can be a starter. So I obviously have a lot of confidence in what Josh Burnham can do. And just seeing him live and in person just solidifies that fact for me. I mean, I love this kid. And I think, I don't want to say he got the shaft last year. I don't think he played enough. I'm not saying he should have started last year. I would have liked to see him on the field a little bit more. But there were some pretty good guys in front of him. And so it made it make sense, right? Well, he's going to have an opportunity this year, I think, to really make some noise. And I think when we think about the levels of breakout, he's going to go from like a seldom used rotation player to a guy that they count on. And I don't know that he'll ever be a quote unquote official starter, right? But I think he will be in when it matters. I think he will be on the field when it matters in some form or fashion. And that's all I need from him. I think he's going to be a guy that they trust. I think he's going to be a guy that they count on. And I think he's going to be a guy that allows this staff to not necessarily have to go to the transfer portal for another defensive end. I think they're going to be like, we got Josh. We're good. It's not necessary. And just like we talk about at the quarterback position, right? They've recruited to a point where they shouldn't have to go to the portal for a starting quarterback they shouldn't have to go to the portal for a starting defensive end because of the guys that they have developed and the guys that they have recruited. And so that's where I see Josh being. I think this is going to be a big year for him. And I think it's just going to propel him into the starting role for next year. And then he takes that next step where we could have that conversation again about being a quote unquote breakout because he has a chance to go to that next level.
Burnham and Bryce Young going into 2025 should give you a lot of confidence to not have to worry about going to the portal. And then hopefully by then, like Brennan Vernon, hopefully moves outside and he's developed that number 3. And
then you've got
Chris Burgess coming in as a true freshman that can help you. Like, you know what? We may need to go there for Viper or some defensive tackle, maybe.
Sure.
But big end, you're like, nah, we're good. We've got our guys that we've developed, and and you're going to be in a good position. So, yeah, you nailed that, Vince. Absolutely nailed that. Agree with you.
So there's kind of a next level of guys. Well, you didn't talk about another guy who's on the inside that you think has a really good chance.
Yeah, Jason Onye. Jason Onye is a guy that, look, we just – we saw him show flashes the previous spring and in fall camp, and then we saw him show flashes last season. But he very much looked very much looked like a guy that had never really played meaningful downs of college football and was figuring it all out. Last year's production helped him a ton. Or not last year's production. Last year's snaps, last year's opportunities, last year's attention.
Time. I mean, because remember back 2 springs ago, so not this past spring, but the spring before that, he was kind of like the media darling, right? Because he kind of likes to chirp a little bit, and he's funny, and that we caught some,
and you'd see some flashes of talent.
100%.
I mean, wow, that guy's got a little something there.
And then I don't know that the I don't want this to sound negative because it's not negative, but I don't know if the production matched
definitely
did media hype, right?
Definitely.
I mean that he was getting.
Well,
but I don't
know that anyone. I think he kind of lived up to the hype because he was a regular in the rotation. I don't know that anyone thought he was going to come out. At least I don't know of anyone that I spoke to. I don't read what anyone else wrote. You would have a better sense of that than I do. But no one that I spoke to. So like when I'm talking to Tim O'Malley and Tim Priester and guys like that, none of us were like, man, Jason Onye may push Riley Mills this year for a starting job. I mean, that wasn't the conversation. It was like, hey, I think this kid's going to be help you out and give you some snaps this year. And he did. Yeah. And there were times when he did that and produced. I mean, first 4 games of the year, he had 5 pressures.
Yeah.
Then he went through a period of a month or so where he didn't do a whole lot. And then he finished the year off pretty well, I thought, So, I mean, he had 5 pressures and 8 run stops in the first 4 games of the season last year, Vince. That's very good production. And then he kind of faded. When the schedule ramped up, it faded. He didn't play against Ohio State, didn't play a lot against Duke, didn't play a lot against Louisville, didn't play a lot against USC, and then didn't play a lot against Clemson, and then played a little bit in the last few games. So it was sort of that break-in season for him. And I think he did exactly what you hoped he would do, minimum of what you hoped he would do. Not like that's the best you could have expected. No, he did the minimum of what you hoped he would do and slightly more. And then he gave you, over 100 snaps last season. And gave you 155 is what Pro Football Focus has him as. He came into the year with 8 career snaps. That's it. Well, now he goes into a season with 163 career snaps, not 8. And another strong spring and a more consistent spring.
Right.
That ended with him playing very well in the Jersey scrimmage and very well in the blue gold game. And so now it's like, okay, when you spell Riley Mills, can you produce? When you spell Howard Cross, because they do a little bit of swinging with Onye, can you produce? In my prediction this year is that he will, which is going to allow them to play Riley a little bit less, which is going to allow Riley to be even fresher in the fourth quarter. And my hope is that with that, Riley Mills can become sort of the 2024 version of what Khalid Kareem was in 2018. You remember what Khalid was an end, but I'm talking about this specifically. It just, to me, seems a lot like, and I talked about it back then, Vince, but it seemed like whenever they were in a game where they needed a stop in the fourth quarter, it was Khalid who made it. Mm-hmm. Whether it was Michigan, whether it was Vanderbilt, whether it was Pitt, it just seemed like whenever a big play needed to be made in the fourth quarter, Khalid would make it. Well, part of the reason for that is because Khalid didn't have to play 60 snaps a game.
Sure.
Because they had Adetokunbo Ogundeji spelling him off the bench. And so Khalid could kind of go into games and say, hey, look, he's fresher in the fourth quarter of games because they could spell him at times. And Khalid was excellent that season. And so, and again, of course, as an edge player, there's not as much pounding on him. So you can get a little bit more snaps from a guy like that. But can Riley be that guy? I think he can be. Part of it is going to be just if you can take 10 snaps a game off of his shoulders in a lot of the games, and I think he can do that. But can you do that and still not lose his production? Because that's the problem. It's easy to make the decision, okay, we're going to play Howard and Riley 10 to 15 snaps, fewer snaps a game, especially in the games that aren't against the best opponents. Okay, great. You can make that decision, but it doesn't mean it's a good decision if the guys going into the game aren't producing. And so it comes down to, can Jason Onye justify Riley playing less with his play?
Right.
And I'm predicting that he will this season. I think he's off the bench going to be a 4 or 5 tackle for loss, couple sack kind of guy. That's what I think he's going to be.
And he's right on schedule. He's right on schedule with where his development should be. He's not ahead of the game. He's not behind the game. Like, he's right on schedule, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you. The better off he is, the better off this defense is going to be, because, again, we're all sitting here hoping that Notre Dame's playing a 16-game schedule, right? And so I want a fresh Riley Mills in that 16th game, right? I want a fresh Howard Cross in that 16th game. I want to fresh all of those guys in the 16th game, but that takes every one of those guys to be able to pick up the slack and allow some guys to get a little bit extra rest at certain points in the season. I mean, every coach is learning this on the fly because they've never done it before. They're playing an NFL schedule, for goodness sakes. You know what I mean? And so the more productive and the more trust, that's a big word, the T word, right, for coaches, the more trust that Jason Onye has with Al Washington and Al Golden, I mean, the better off this defensive line is going to be. I mean, because then you've got a fresh Jason Onye, you've got a fresh Riley Mills, all of those things when it counts in December and January. So, yeah, that's it. That's going to be a huge piece of the puzzle, and I'm also very confident that is going to take place.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple more guys now, Brian, that have an opportunity to be a breakout this year, and it's an interesting list for sure. And we got a guy on here who is his first year with Notre Dame, and then we've got a couple of guys on here that are going to see an increased role this year as well.
Who would that be? Oh, I got you. The second part of the breakout category. I thought you were transitioning to freshman. I was like,
oh, no.
I was like, wait a second.
Trying to hit all the parts.
I'm like, increased role.
The look on your face was
talking about.
Fantastic.
No. It's yes. Yes. There's the two sections of the breakout. One is the guys I feel really good about, and the second one is guys that have a chance to have breakouts. The first one's RJ Oben. And in his case, a breakout is not repeating what he's done. If he kind of does around what Javonte did last year, that's a mini breakout for him. And I think he's got a chance to do that. 10 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. That's a mini breakout for him.
But yeah, I got you.
The question is, can he be even more productive than that on a per snap basis? Now, here's the interesting thing, and I've said this before. I could see a scenario where RJ Oben doesn't repeat or simply just matches what Javonte did last year, but he's much more productive. And what I mean by that is on a per snap basis. Because I don't think RJ is going to play as many snaps as what Javonte played last year.
Okay.
Because of Burnham.
I was going to say, because of what's behind him. Okay,
correct.
Gotcha. Yep. So
it'll be about evaluating him in a similar fashion that we evaluated Jack Kaiser. If you just look at Jack Kaiser's raw numbers comparing to JD and Maris, it's like he wasn't close to being as productive.
Yeah,
he played half the snaps they played.
Right.
If you look at his production on a per snap basis, he was their most disruptive linebacker whenever he was on the field. And that's what I think RJ has a chance to be this year. And then here's the other thing too, is can RJ have the kind of year that keeps Josh Burnham as a number 2 as opposed to 1A, 1B? That's the other question. He has that potential. We just need to see if he can turn it into consistent production. We had Ryan on the show when he would talk about RJ. He says this guy graded out as an NFL draft pick this year. He was on teams' draft boards if he would have come out this year. Now he's got a chance to kind of take things to another level, and he's got to do it. We talked about Heinisch as well, Vince. He's another guy on this list for me that I think, especially now that Gabriel Rubio is out, Donovan's got a chance to kind of come in and because here's the thing, Donovan Heinisch and Howard Cross are very, very, very similar players.
Mm-hmm.
Undersized, shorter, play with good pad level, disruptive, athletic guys that play beyond their size. Donovan's further along than Howard was, in my opinion, at the same age. Like if you look at where Donovan was, because Donovan was a second-year player last year, and you look at kind of what he was asked to do, I would argue that he was more productive and a better player than Howard Cross was in his second year with Notre Dame. So I think he gave you some really good production last year, some really good snaps last year. Now the question is, can he produce at an even higher level? Yeah. And I'll give you an example of what I'm referring to. Okay, so Howard Cross in his second year at Notre Dame, Howard Cross was a member of the 2019 class. Howard actually played a little bit as a true freshman. He played 63 snaps. In year 2, he played 166 snaps. Donovan in year 2 only played 100 snaps. But in year 2, in year 1 or year 2 for Howard, he had 6 run stops. Donovan last year in 66 fewer snaps had 9 run stops last season. So Howard in his 1 year and 166 snaps had 8 tackles. And Donovan Heinisch last year in 100 snaps had 9 tackles. So again, I'm talking about it on a per snap basis. Now, Howard was more disruptive from a pass rushing standpoint, but he also played twice as many pass rush snaps. So at the very minimum, Donovan is on the same level of trajectory that Howard was. I would argue he's slightly ahead of where Howard was at the same age. So can he go out there in the second year, in his third year, and kind of take a bit of a jump? That's going to be the question. And Howard really didn't take his big jump until years 4 and 5. Donovan might be a little bit ahead of schedule, and they're going to need him to be because the opportunity is there. Yeah. So I think that's why partly why I'm predicting the breakout for Donovan is because I think being in year 3, getting all those snaps last year, again, partly because Gabe Brewer was out, prepared him to be better, to give you more this year. And I think he's going to come in and be that guy that you're like, man, you can afford to give Howard Cross 5 to 10 less snaps a game against Texas A&M because you've given those to Donovan and he's out there making plays.
Yeah.
Because that's where, when you're a coach, Vince, and you've got that stud and you put the backup in and the backup's having a great series, you're less prone to run your stud back out there like, hey, just hang over here. Let's let that young pup, eat a little bit because he's out there making plays. That's great because now I just took 4 or 5 snaps off what my guy was because I was going to rush him back out there. My other guy gave me some good snaps. We're just going to keep my starter fresher. You love being in that situation.
And again,
and I think
freshness is important based on everything that I said before about Jason Onye and et cetera, right? So yeah, he's going to be huge, and it'll be nice. It'll be fun to see number 41 out there causing havoc again, as it did with his older brother, and that whole thing. And we know that the effort and all of the things that the Heinisches are known for, which is why one of the reasons that Donovan got recruited to Notre Dame, is all going to be there. But I remember doing the commitment show with you for Donovan, and we were watching this film, and we were going through it, and all these different things, and it's like, okay, it's Kurt, but a more athletic version. And again, that has held true kind of throughout his Notre Dame career at this point. And so it'll be fun to see him out there making some plays for sure.
I want to do something real quick, Vince. Yeah. Donovan, Kurt Heinisch, in his second year at Notre Dame, played 366 snaps. In those, or 354 snaps. In those 354 snaps, he had 8 pressures and 9 tackles and 9 run stops in 354 snaps. Last year, Donovan Heinisch, in only 100 snaps, had only 2 pressures, but he had 9 tackles and 9 run stops.
Wow.
He had the same exact number of tackles and the same exact number of run stops that Kurt had in his sophomore year at Notre Dame.
With
over three times more snaps. So Kurt played 354 snaps. Donovan played 100. Now, for the little asterisk, this defensive system is geared more towards production from the D-line than that one was.
Sure.
But not that much.
Right.
Right? So it puts into context a little bit of what Donovan Heinisch is doing and what he's bringing to the table as a disruptive potential player. Now I expect him to take it to another level. I do.
Yeah. No,
I think
for sure.
His brother, is an undrafted free agent who's playing snaps in the NFL now.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like
100%.
That's just kind of that's who he is.
And you got one more guy that you want to talk about before we move on to the.
By the way,
Rooks.
Kurt Hinish, who was undrafted, I'm looking at Pro Football Focus, played over 500 snaps in the NFL last year.
Yeah.
Right. So,
he sacked Ian Book, which that's what I remember.
That was 2 years ago, wasn't it?
I think so, but yeah.
Hater.
Well, I don't watch a lot of Texans games. I assume he's still with the Texans, I think. Okay. Yeah. So I have to say, I will admit that I don't watch a lot of Texans games.
He's played about 1,000 snaps the last 2 years. Vince.
That's impressive.
I mean, he played 39 snaps in the wild card game and 38 snaps in the divisional playoff game last year for the Texans.
He's in the rotation. No, I mean, that's clear.
He had 5 pressures, including 2 sacks in the postseason last year.
That's awesome.
Against Cleveland and Baltimore.
That's awesome.
So
that's so awesome.
Yep. Last guy for me is Armel Mukam. This is one that I'm a little less optimistic about right now.
Okay.
Gabriel Rubio being out has thrust Armel Mukam into the mix a little bit. And some of the things I heard from my sources around Notre Dame were his potential is immense, but they're just not sure if he's ready yet now. But sometimes when you give these really talented younger players opportunities, you get surprised by what they do.
Sure.
And I think Armel Mukam's a guy that I have my eye on I want to see how he does with these extra reps in fall camp.
Sure.
Really want to see how he does. Because his first step's impressive, but you could also see in practice he's got a lot to learn. But there's a lot of talent there. So he's a guy to at least keep an eye on.
This is a heck of a freshman class on this defensive line. And in a lot of other years, we would have already been talking about this class and what they were going to be doing probably on a Saturday, as far as higher up on the depth chart than they probably currently are, or maybe will be once the season gets rolling. And this is a very interesting rookie class. And so, we're going to talk about, 4 different guys, in the freshman class, one of which we think is going to be making an impact in the rotation, and then 3 other guys that could, make an impact as far as maybe make an impact on the depth chart or push some guys or, those kinds of situations. But there's definitely one guy that we think is going to be making an impact on this defensive line in games.
I mean, from 2019, so post 2018, but from 2019 to 2023, there is no question Bryce Young is your number 2 defensive end. And in some years, he might have started by middle of September, if not by the opener.
Right.
And he's that talented. He's 6'7", almost 260. And just athletically, you're just like, guys that big aren't supposed to move like that. I mean, he just has that ability.
Yep.
He's going to play this year. You just can't not play him this year. It's just like, it's kind of like we said about Joe Rudolph. It's like, hey, Coach Washington, like, dude, coach him up, get him ready. But the thing is, you don't have to play him 30 snaps a game.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to find a way to get him on the field for 10 snaps a game, especially against some of the lesser than opponents. Let's be honest. He needs to play minimum 15, 20 snaps against Northern Illinois and Miami of Ohio and Virginia and Navy, teams like that. But this is a kid that to me is going to play for you. What's his role? That's to be determined. But there's just way too much talent. We saw it in the spring game. We see it in practice where he'll have one snap and a one-on-one, and you're like, yeah, he's got to learn how to use those moves. And then the next time it's like, oh, there it was. You know what I mean? And he's
Very
just one of those guys.
Kid.
And that's it. You got to coach him up though. He's going to play. He's going to provide an impact this year. How much? I don't know. But you're going to look at his per snap production this year and be like, that kid's going to be a star next year. Like I have a feeling as good as I think this end rotation is right now, I have a feeling by the way that I expect Bryce Young and Josh Burnham to finish this season, that we're going to be looking ahead to next year saying, this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
This is going to be a lot of fun.
That's going to be one heck of a 1-2 punch on that side of the defense. Yeah. Plain and simple.
Agree.
Plain and simple. And that's, one of the many reasons that not looking past 24, but as you project to 25, which we can do because we're analysts and we're not coaches. And so we can look past this.
It's our show. We can do everything we want to.
Well, fair enough. But
I give you permission to project away, Vince.
Thanks, buddy. But when you look at 25 and it's one of the many reasons when you look at 25, you get very excited about what this team can do. I mean, bottom line. So,
and I think Andrew Gilmore just nailed a point that I wasn't even thinking about because I was just focusing on defense. He says, but Bryce Young should carry on the tradition of blocking punts like Isaiah Foskey and Jordan Patel.
cool.
Young linemen that only, I mean, remember Patel
He's going to be a fixture on special teams.
Yeah.
Brian.
Isaiah had one against, was it Pitt in 2020? Right. And then Patel had one against South Florida in 2020 that year. Actually, Foskey's first block punt was actually against Stanford in 2019 on the road. Remember that? And he almost recovered it for a touchdown. So that was his freshman year for him that year.
He's
so
6'7" with long arms. Put him on the punt block team.
Yeah.
I mean,
figure it out. I mean, there's just so many, and this is what excites me about this team, Vince, and we'll wrap up quickly with the rest of the freshmen here. But the reality is, man, there's just certain guys in this freshman class, in this sophomore class, that you just got to say to your coaches, figure it out, man. Yeah, like, figure out a way to get them on the field.
100%.
You know, I was having a conversation one time with a guy that coached under Urban Meyer, and Coach Meyer would go into their office and be like, this kid needs to play. Well, what do you expect? He's like, figure it out. Like, get that kid on the field. That's your
that's your job.
Too talented to not be playing. Right. Figure it out. Get him on the field. And there's just a lot of guys like that on the offensive side and defensive side of the ball. I mean, you look offensively, it's Gerby Lambert now. It's Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, Keedron Young. You know, you look at Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, KK Smith, Micah Gilbert, Cam Williams. You know, defensively, you look at other positions. I mean, dude, figure it out. Get Christian Grant on the field some way, somehow. Figure it out. You know, Leonard Moore.
Yeah.
You know, you look at Drake Bowen, Kingston Viliama-Asa. I mean, and of course now with Bryce Young, it's like, dude, figure it out. Figure out a way to get this kid on the field and make an impact.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's why we're paying you X amount of dollars. That's basically what that's what you get hired to do. To take studs like this and get them ready to go. Now, the good news for Al Washington is he doesn't have to force the issue with Bryce Young. He doesn't have to play him more than maybe he's ready to play. Or the other way to look at it is he can bring him along a little bit slower, meaning he doesn't have to give him 50 snaps on the road in College Station right now. I mean, that you don't need him to do that. If he can give you 10, you know, bull in a china shop snaps, cool.
Yeah.
And then you're good to go. And then eventually maybe he earns more. But if you're Coach Washington, you got to be sitting there pinching yourself saying, I've got RJ Oben and Josh Burnham. That's exciting enough. But now I got this young pup to work with. Dude, figure it out. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that's my theme for the day. Figure it out. I mean, you got studs. Go get production. And you know what? That's exactly what Al Washington did last year at the defensive end position. You know what? I mean, it's a big question mark going into the season, Vince. One of the biggest. I mean, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, he's never been a starter. He's never been in a regular. He's been a rotation guy. Nano Safa-Mensah, like, what's he going to give you? And guess what? Al Washington coached him up, figured it out, went out and got production at a top 10 D-line last year. Hey, you know what? How are you going to replace Isaiah Foskey? I mean, right now we're talking about how are they going to replace Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Nana Safa-Mensah. Last year we were talking about how are you going to replace Isaiah Foskey and Jason Adamiola and Justin Adamiola and Chris Smith and Jacob Lacey. There was a lot more questions about who you're going to replace last year than there are this year. And you've got some really talented players now stepping into that mix. And that's why you kind of get excited about what they can and should be.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, figure it out. And then, you know, look at the rest of them. Logan Thomas, I've heard some great things about, super athletic. I had someone tell me, like, he's fast. And I was like, yeah, I know. And he said, no, you don't know. I'm not talking about fast for a defensive lineman. No. I'm talking about he's just fast. He's one of our fastest players, period. Yeah. And that's a 225-pound defensive lineman. Love what he's bringing to the table. He's probably a year away. You know, maybe he can find a third down, just rush the quarterback role. But even at 225, Vince, that's pretty light for a kid that's about 6'5", almost 6'5". You know, there's some left tackles that just can get a little shot to the ribs, and he's out. You know, he's probably a year away, but super athletic kid. Sean Sevillano, I think, is a guy that has a chance to help out this year. Has a chance to step in and say, hey, look, I'm going to give you some goal line snaps at 320 plus. I'm going to give you some short yardage snaps at 320 plus. He's a guy that I think can help you out. And I've heard some great things about Cole Mullins as well. But I think Bryce Young and Sean Sevillano are the two that give you the most chance to help you out in year one. Because we talk about how, you know, unique Bryce Young is, but Sean Sevillano is just something you don't have anywhere else. And that's just beef. Major beef. Yeah. You just don't have anybody else at 6'1", 320 plus. And he's lost 20 pounds to get down to 320. You know what I mean? So
That's
you
crazy all by
just
itself.
don't have a lot of that, Vince. And
Yeah.
you need it. Like, you don't necessarily need that on 1st and 10 at the minus 35, but there's definitely situations where you need that. And
Sure.
I think he's going to have a chance to handle that role this season and give them that, that change up. Like, think about it. If you're trying to block Howard Cross for 2 series, and you try to block, Donovan Heinisch, and they bring Howard Cross back, and then all of a sudden the next series, after you're chasing these 280-pound twitchy guys, you're like, now I got to block that freaking guy. Are you seriously? It's a completely different dynamic that you got to.
And that's huge. Be able to throw different types of bodies at guys and different types of defense. Frankly, you can call a defense a different way when you have these different body styles and stuff in the middle. And so it just kind of opens up the playbook a little bit for you. If he can, work his way into the rotation and do the things that he needs to do. And again, you're not talking 20 to 25 snaps a game. You're talking 5 to 10 snaps a game,
Right,
where he can help you out.
Agree.
That's going to do it for this edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We had great viewership today, which is awesome. Thanks for hanging out with us. And, some of that was probably
I'd like to say it's because people are ready for the season, but we all know what it was about.
But they hung out the entire time. That's the key right there, Brian. They hung out.
Hey, everybody that's in here new. We're here every day. So,
yep, every day.
If you're late to the show, we talked about the Charles Jagasaw stuff way at the beginning of the show.
Yep.
And before we jumped into our defensive line stuff. And
it'll be out in podcast form here momentarily. So, hold on to your britches.
Yeah, you're going to get the Jagasaw stuff up now, and then
right
the D-line stuff will be up tomorrow morning. Yep.
Correct. So thanks for hanging out with us. Really appreciate it. Tune in tonight. We'll have IB Nation Sports Talk at 5:00. And then tomorrow, Brian and I will be back at it, and we will have a practice report because we will be at practice in the morning, and we will let you know what we see. And then we will move into linebackers. And so we're going to break down the linebacking core tomorrow. So it should be a lot of fun. So make sure you join us again tomorrow at 1:00 because we'll be here. Will you? That's the question. Make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell, share with your family and friends, jump on the boards at irishbreakdown.com. If you just can't wait till 1:00 for us to give you the verbal version of practice, get on the boards and you'll get it instantaneously. I mean, that's all I can say. So you want to make sure you get over there. That's where you get the breaking news. That's where you get all the insights and everything. So make sure you get on there, join the family. We'd love to have you. So boards.irishbreakdown.com. So for Brian, I'm Vince, and we will talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown podcast.